Hi, Bobby Herzberg, Mercatus Center at George Mason University. In discussing mainline economics and the various contributors to that tradition, we've focused largely on the three that at George Mason University have become the core of our program and part of our Adam Smith Fellowship program as well. F.A. Hayek, Jim Buchanan, and Eleanor Ostrom. But in fact, there are a number of others who have contributed to mainline economics and incorporate many of the same approaches that I think show their roots back in the work of Adam Smith and the concerns that he expressed about a broader sense of understanding economic analysis and the process of the market. Three among them that are included in a volume done by my colleagues at the Mercatus Center, Pete Becky, Stephanie Hafel, and Virgil Storr, is the Ronald Coase, who provided an institutional analysis on the firm and economic decision-making and processes, the work of Douglas North, an important contributor to the idea of the institutions of economics and how they develop and evolve over time and historic patterns, and more recently the work of Vernon Smith on experimental economics and how by using the experimental laboratory we can start to understand the way in which some of these difficult problems can be worked out. It allows us to test theory in a way that allows us to get at some of the key components and to isolate them and control them in a way that is very difficult for us to do given the complexity of the kinds of problems we're looking at in natural settings. And so his work allows us to move on. So all three of those are recognized in that volume because of the way in which they contribute to our understanding of how institutions, economic interests, and the capacity to self-govern create greater options for us than often mainstream economics would presume, or a narrower, more scientific, scientistic basis of economic reasoning would suggest. And so we can look at each of them a little bit more carefully. Ronald Coase, for example, gives us important work on both social dilemmas and social costs. So what we do when we have problems of externalities, how do we deal with problems of pollution, and who in fact should be contributing if in fact we find ourselves in a conflict between someone, for example, who's polluting and someone who is feeling the effects or negative effects. And what he suggested is with well-established property rights, if transaction costs are low enough, you could generate results even in the absence of a mechanism for forcing a polluter to do it, that you could do it through negotiation or bargaining. He also gives us extensive work on theories of the firm and organization that we can use not only to understand how firms make decisions and why they come together to lower transaction costs, but also how bureaucracies start to make decisions. And in that context, we see work then that is followed up by work by Nobelist Oliver Williamson and others on theories of the firm and theories of transaction costs. But much of this, in fact, is included in Ronald Coase and his first initial analyses of that. In the work of Douglas North, he explores how economic systems, especially market systems and different approaches to the economy, mercantilism, etc., evolve over time, and when people will choose different institutional arrangements to try and solve coming together and create real markets. And so he is able to suggest to us lessons for development, lessons for when in fact state intervention and state rules, property rights, and other interests might in fact create dilemmas that need to be overcome. And so his work is very rich and suggests something almost akin to Hayek's spontaneous order in the actual playing out of institutional arrangements, and so lays an important groundwork for some of the other institutional analysis that follows, including the work by the Ostroms that we've already discussed. And finally, as I noted, Vernon Smith's work on experimental labs has looked at everything from how to design new economic exchange markets, how we might deliver in the political arena different economic privilege or economic access, to how Adam Smith's theories of trust and coordination could be incorporated in the benefits that we get out of those economic markets, and the degree to which we need to maintain freedom in those markets in order to achieve some of these goods. So he demonstrates that real people making decisions in an experimental lab, when faced with the kinds of rule structures that have existed in natural settings, can resolve some of the dilemmas that frequently other economists suggested would be beyond the capacity of individuals and must be addressed by the state. And then he shows how some of the state interventions would also contribute to the breakdown of those arrangements. And he does all of this by trying to understand them using the experimental lab. So again, these are three other very important contributors. Coming out of the work of all three of these and of the three we've already discussed, we have a myriad of scholars today. The entire field of public choice created by Buchanan and Tulloch, and the Ostroms and many others has blossomed into thousands and thousands of scholars contributing across a range of fields. Likewise, experimental economics is now a very popular field in economics departments around the world, including at UFM. Likewise, we also have the work of Ronald Coase making us very conscious of possibilities for dealing with the challenges of externalities and pollution and whether or not we can solve them in one way or another. So all of these different scholars, I think, have laid the groundwork for literally many thousands, even tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, to go beyond and contribute to institutional analysis. Thank you.